Welcome the anointed ones. God rarely announces what he is about to do. He simply gives one person the eyes to see it before everyone else. And when it finally happens, the people who laughed become the loudest witnesses. History has a strange pattern that most people never notice. The people who recognize the truth early are almost never celebrated in the beginning. They're questioned, they're mocked, they're ignored. Then reality catches up, and suddenly everyone acts as if the signs were obvious all along. That is one of the most fascinating things about Jesus. He wasn't simply predicting events. He understood people. He knew that human nature repeats itself across every generation. He saw pride before it became destruction. He saw betrayal while everyone else saw friendship. He saw empty religion hiding behind impressive appearances. He saw storms while everyone else was busy planning picnics. The uncomfortable truth is that people don't usually reject what is false. They reject what exposes them too early. That's why those who see clearly often walk through lonely seasons. When you recognize patterns before the crowd does, people mistake discernment for negativity. They assume you're overthinking. They tell you to relax. They call you dramatic. Then the very thing you warned about arrives, and suddenly the room goes strangely quiet. Funny how people develop excellent hearing after reality starts speaking. Jesus experienced that throughout his ministry. He warned, he revealed, he discerned. Most people brushed it aside because truth has an annoying habit of refusing to fit inside comfortable opinions. This message isn't about claiming supernatural powers or pretending to know every future event. It's about developing the kind of discernment that Jesus consistently demonstrated, the ability to see beneath appearances, recognize hidden patterns, and refuse to be deceived by what merely looks convincing. If you've ever felt misunderstood because you noticed something others couldn't, if you've ever watched people dismiss wisdom only to later admit you were right, then this message will connect some dots you may have never connected before. Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't predicting tomorrow. It's having the courage to trust what truth is already revealing today. Number 1. You recognized the pattern before everyone else did. One of the greatest advantages a person can have is not speed, strength, or even intelligence. It is the ability to recognize patterns before they become obvious. Most people only believe something after it has happened. They wait for undeniable proof, public opinion, or a crisis big enough that it can no longer be ignored. But by then, the opportunity to prepare or avoid disaster has already passed. Jesus constantly demonstrated this kind of discernment. He saw beyond words and looked at what repeated actions were revealing. He understood that people rarely become someone new overnight. They simply become more of who they have been all along. A dishonest person doesn't suddenly wake up dishonest. Pride doesn't appear in a single afternoon. Betrayal begins with small compromises long before it reaches the headlines. Jesus recognized these patterns, which is why so many of his warnings were ignored until they became reality. The same principle still applies today. Every decision leaves a trail, and every habit tells a story about where someone is heading. While others become distracted by appearances, you pay attention to consistency. You notice what keeps repeating because repetition is rarely accidental. It reveals direction. Someone can say all the right things, but if their actions constantly point another way, the pattern is already speaking. This is why people are often unsettled when your observations prove true. They assumed you were guessing, being too cautious, or reading too much into the situation. They never realized you weren't predicting the future. You were simply paying attention to what was already unfolding. By the time everyone else finally sees what you saw, they're shocked. you're not. You recognized the pattern long before the outcome arrived, and that quiet awareness became your greatest protection. Number 2. You refuse to borrow confidence from the crowd. One of the biggest traps people fall into is believing that if enough people agree on something, it must be true. But history has shown the opposite time and time again. Crowds can be wrong. Popular opinions can collapse. Loud voices can hide empty thinking. The danger is that many people never stop to ask whether they truly believe something or whether they simply adopted the belief because everyone around them did. Jesus never borrowed confidence from the crowd. He didn't change his message to make people comfortable, and he didn't measure truth by applause. When people walked away from him, he didn't chase after them to soften his words. His confidence came from knowing who he was and what he had been called to do. That kind of confidence cannot be given by people, and it cannot be taken away by them either. The same principle applies today. When your convictions are built on truth instead of public approval, you stop living at the mercy of other people's opinions. You no longer need everyone to understand your choices before you make them. That doesn't mean you become stubborn or refuse wise advice. It means your foundation is deeper than popularity. This is what unsettles people. They expect criticism to make you retreat and rejection to make you doubt yourself. Instead, you remain steady because your direction was never determined by the crowd in the first place. While others constantly check which way public opinion is moving, you stay grounded in what you know is right. Ironically, the very people who questioned your confidence often become the ones searching for answers when everything they trusted begins to fall apart. They discover too late that confidence borrowed from the crowd disappears the moment the crowd changes its mind. Confidence rooted in truth endures, even when you stand alone. Number 3. You saw character, not performance. One of the easiest mistakes people make is believing the version of someone that is carefully presented instead of the person consistently revealed over time. A polished image can be created in a day, but genuine character is built over years. That is why appearances can be convincing, while actions quietly tell a completely different story. Jesus never judged people by how impressive they looked on the outside. He wasn't captivated by titles, popularity, or carefully chosen words. He saw beyond the performance and straight into the heart. While others admired outward appearances, he noticed hidden motives. He could tell the difference between sincere faith and a desire for attention, between real compassion and kindness that existed only when someone was watching. That same kind of discernment is rare today. Many people are easily influenced by confidence, charm, or a strong reputation. They assume that someone who speaks well must also live well. But life has a way of exposing the gap between image and integrity. Sooner or later, every performance ends, and character is left standing alone. This is why you are not easily fooled by first impressions. You pay attention to consistency. You notice how people treat those who cannot benefit them. You watch what they do when no applause is waiting. You understand that habits